Chapter 1005. Why was he so excited? Yu Qianqiu could tell from the strength and rhythm of the kid's tugging that it was as if he wasn't tugging at his clothes, but the fishtail that was trying its best to reach him. It was as if he wanted to pull the other party down. His intentions were unfathomable. In the end, just as he wished, that netherworld river black carp couldn't move forward even an inch when it was only a dozen meters away from the top. Under the scouring of the treasured glaze light, its body slowly slid down. In the end, it gave up due to its lack of cultivation and fell down. With a bang, it made a regretful splash in the netherworld river. Amidst the cries of regret, Yu Qianqiu's hand that was holding onto Yu Qianqiu's back gradually loosened its grip. Everyone could now see that the colored glaze light enveloping the dragon transformation gate exerted greater pressure the closer one got to the top. It was difficult for those without great abilities to reach the top and become a dragon in one leap. This colored glaze light undoubtedly had a screening function. Not every nether river black carp could pass its test. Although this nether river black carp had failed, the fact that it was only a dozen meters away from the top made the other nether river black carps below excited. They all saw the hope of success. It still started from the back. Another river black carp swam close to Li Guang. After making some preparations, it broke through the waves like an arrow released from a bow. As it neared the dragon transformation gate, it vigorously leapt up. Its 7 or 8 meter body was about the same size as the previous one, and its speed and strength were not any weaker. It resisted the enormous pressure exerted by the colored glaze light and soared up, fighting against fate. Damn it! It's here again. Yu Qianqiu felt like he was going to go crazy. Xiao Yuan's demonic claws were using the 1,000 catty drop on him again. He now hated himself for being so gluttonous that he had thrown out his pole to catch this demonic star to torture himself. People said that one would stink if they didn't eat mutton. He was another river black carp who didn't eat mutton and got stink. Coming to the netherworld was truly retribution. Looking at the surface of the nether river, there were still more than 200 nether river black carps lining up to leap through the dragon transformation gate. These 200. I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore. Yu Qianqiu's gaze swept around, finally landing on the Li Palace's third princess who happened to be standing right in front of him. Recalling the scene of him grabbing that rotten little child and asking for his sister to save him, his eyes instantly lit up. There was no doubt that the third princess still had a place in the fourth prince's heart, so he should be able to discipline her. Third princess. Here, behind you. Hee hee. The Li Palace's third princess, who was currently looking up at the black carp leaping through the dragon gate, heard someone's voice and looked left and right. When he finally turned around, he immediately saw Yu Qianqiu smiling bitterly at him. Yu Qianqiu stood there with his body askew. His movements were abnormally awkward because his robe was being pulled by his younger brother. The third princess immediately turned around and nodded apologetically at Yu Qianqiu. She then glared at her brother who was staring at the dragon transformation sect and whispered, "Little Yuan, don't be rude." Xiao Yuan looked at his sister blankly, not knowing where he had gone wrong. The third princess could only glare at him and personally pull away Xiao Yuan's hand that was tugging on Yu Qianqiu's robe. "I've finally escaped from this unlucky child's clutches." Yu Qianqiu smiled at the third princess in a refreshed and gentlemanly manner, casually tidying up his robe that was a complete mess. The third princess pulled Xiao Yuan's hand, frowned and reprimanded him in a low voice, "Stand in front of me." "No. I want to be with brother Yu." Xiao Yuan's attitude was very stubborn, as if he was determined to be with him for the rest of his life. His other hand once again grabbed onto Yu Qianqiu's robe. Yu Qianqiu was not prepared at all and stumbled from the tug. His expression twitched and he looked innocently at the third princess, as if saying, "Big sister, please discipline me." The third princess felt extremely apologetic for her brother's rash actions and shyly bowed to Yu Qianqiu. Anger flashed across her face as she said in a low voice, "Be obedient and stand in front of me." No. Xiao Yuan hugged Yu Qianzhou's arm with one arm. The commotion caused by the two sisters attracted the attention of the brothers and sisters in front of them. Even Li Guang and his wife glared at them, as if reprimanding the siblings for still being in the mood to play at a time like this. It was simply too outrageous. The third princess was suffering in silence and could only glare at her brother angrily. However, it was not convenient for her to continue tugging and pulling, so she took Xiao Yuan's hand and stood beside him. Beside them, Zhang Yinaxian glanced sideways at Yu Qianzhou, the corners of his mouth curling into a mocking smile. Yu Qianzhou looked at Xiao Yuan, who was tugging at him, and suddenly had a very strange feeling. There was a child standing between the man and woman. Why did it feel like? Raising his head, he coincidentally bumped into the third princess, who was looking up at the same time. The two froze at the same time, both faintly feeling that they were thinking of the same thing. Yu Qianzhou was very good at concealing his thoughts. He grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth, as if to prove that he was very pure and had not let his thoughts run wild. But the third princess averted her gaze, a blush rising to her face as she quickly turned her head away. With a bang, the netherworld river black carp followed in its footsteps. Just like the previous one, it failed on the verge of success when it was only 10-some meters away from the top. Soon after, 3 or 4 nether river black carps, which were also 7 or 8 meters in size, attempted to leap over the dragon gate, but all of them failed when they were only 10 meters away from the peak. This short distance of 10 meters seemed like an insurmountable moat, causing the Li Palace's members to sigh in regret. Just as these netherworld river black carps failed, over 100 similar netherworld river black carps quietly disappeared from the 2 lines on the surface of the netherworld river. It was obvious that they had retreated in the face of difficulties. In truth, this was a wise move. Retreating in the face of difficulties and waiting for an opportunity to try again might give them a greater chance of success. However, no one dared to guarantee when the next opportunity would appear. This was also the main reason why everyone was so anxious to try when an opportunity presented itself. At this moment, there were only 100 or so black carps left on the surface of the river, and they were naturally all of extraordinary strength. Strangely, their formation had fallen into disarray. The school of black carps had gathered together, as if discussing something. Not long after, the princes and princesses standing in front of Yu Qianzhou all paled. The first princess said in a low voice, "Not good, the Prime Minister is about to act." The school of netherworld river black carps retreated to the side, leaving behind the largest netherworld river black carp that slowly swam in front of Li Guang. Li Guang gave a slight nod, as if silently agreeing to something. Only then did the black carp turn around and begin its preparations. A moment later, a dorsal fin noiselessly swept across the surface of the water. As soon as it reached the bottom of the dragon transformation gate, a huge black carp over 20 meters long charged straight into the colored glass light. It quickly soared to a height of 60 to 70 meters, then began its second wave of strength. In an instant, it had reached a height of 80 meters, but its momentum did not stop there, and it directly broke through the height of 90 meters. Good! Li Guang yelled and excitedly clapped his hands. Everyone stared nervously at the giant figure, watching it approach the peak bit by bit. Although its speed was getting slower and slower, the frequency of its head and tail swaying was getting faster and faster. It was getting closer and closer, meter by meter. When they were less than 5 meters away from the top of the mountain, the 2 Pegasi that were dragging the carriage on the top of the mountain suddenly leaped up and stood up on their hind legs. They shook their crystal silky manes and let out a long neigh. The colored glass light that enveloped the entire mountain suddenly overflowed with flowing light and became denser. The huge netherworld river black carp's body paused in the colored glass light, and it even showed signs of slowly pressing down. However, the Prime Minister, who could make the princes and princesses change their expressions, was obviously not an ordinary netherworld river black carp's strength. It slowly swayed its head and tail again, and its dark scales suddenly erupted with a dark light. It resisted the colored glass light and slowly climbed up again. There was only 4 meters left, 3 meters, 2 meters left. Everyone held their breaths and focused, witnessing the miracle that was about to happen. The 2 Pegasi on the peak also lowered their heads and looked at him. The distance between them was only 2 meters, but it was this distance that the Prime Minister actually stopped and could not advance any further. All the Netherworld River black carps felt their hearts leap to their throats. There were only 2 meters left. The Pegasi were already very close. Ah! The Prime Minister suddenly let out a muffled groan of pain. His body, which was frozen in the glazed light, began to tremble, and one of the large black scales on his body suddenly fell off and was sent flying by the glazed light. From this, one could see just how much pressure he was under. All the members of the Lee Palace's water tribe paled. But this was only the first scale. As he continued to remain in a stalemate, a second scale slowly fell off and was sent flying, then a third, a fourth. In a few moments, 10 odd scales fell off one after another and dark blood began to seep out. But the moment the blood appeared, it was immediately vaporized by the colored glass light. Those who did not know what was going on were momentarily stunned. It turned out that not only could this colored glass light exert immense pressure, it was also abnormally hot. Just when more than half of the scales on his body had fallen off, the trembling Prime Minister suddenly let out another groan of pain. This heavy groan of pain echoed through the pitch-black sky. His body exploded with a dense black light. His head and tail began to slowly sway back and forth as his body began to rise once more. 1 meter. Just when his massive head was about to reach the peak of the mountain. Good, good. Cheers of success erupted from below. Suddenly, the Prime Minister's head tilted to the side and his eyes lost their light. Starting from his gigantic head, cracks began to appear, and his body immediately lost its mobility. As he fell, his gigantic body, which was more than 20 meters long, began to break into pieces. His bones and flesh flew out and scattered all over the place. Chapter 1006. Dead. Yu Qianqiu speechlessly looked at the sorrowful Lee Palace water tribe. In his last life, he had heard of the carp leaping over the dragon. It seemed like a very cool legend, but he didn't think that such a cool thing would also have life-threatening dangers. TSK. As he sighed, Yu Qianqiu felt the small hand holding his arm tremble. Looking at little Yuan who had his head lowered, he guessed that she had been frightened. Even with the Prime Minister's early-stage underworld emperor cultivation, then with our cultivation, how can we succeed? The first princess at the front said somewhat dejectedly. Her previous chances of success had already disappeared. Legend has it that the ancestors of my Styx Black Carp clan who transformed into a dragon all succeeded after forming good karma with others. The Crown Prince sighed lightly. Is it really like this? And what is this so-called good karma? When the Crown Princes and Princesses heard this, they frowned in thought. When Xiao Yuan heard this, he suddenly raised his head and looked at Yu Qianqiu. However, Yu Qianqiu was currently raising his head and taking the time to appreciate the 2 celestial horses that were standing on top of the dragon transformation gate. He wondered how there could be transparent horses in this world, and where exactly did these 2 horses come from. He was completely unaware that little Yuan, who had just suffered a blow, was currently looking at him with stars in her eyes. Who else wants to try? Li Guang stood back on top of the one-horned water rhinoceros. Looking around at the water tribe under his command, he said in a sorrowful tone, anyone can try, I won't stop you. But everyone saw what happened to the Prime Minister. I hope that everyone will act within their abilities and not be impulsive. Who else wants to try? The nearly 100 Nether River black carps that had revealed their true forms slowly sank back into the water. None of them had a higher cultivation than the great Prime Minister, and the majority of those that were stronger than the great Prime Minister had wasted their opportunity to leap through the Dragon Gate. Most of them had also not come and were guarding the Lee Palace. When they were discussing before, they didn't want to make any pointless attempts and waste an opportunity, cutting off the possibility of success in the future. Therefore, they recommended the Prime Minister, who had the highest cultivation base. But who would have thought that the Prime Minister was so strong? Not only did he not succeed, he even lost his life. After witnessing such a tragic situation, which of these people, whose cultivation was lower than the Prime Minister's, would dare to take the risk? He could only watch from afar and shrink back. The crown princes and princesses, who had been eager to give it a try at first, were now all ashen-faced. No one said anything about the imperial family anymore. They realized that in the face of life and death, everyone was equal. Hee. Li Guang stood on the horned water rhinoceros and shook his head with a bitter smile. It seems like my Nether River Black Carp clan will have to let down the efforts of our ancestors this time. Never mind. Prepare to send off the Pegasus. At this moment, little Yuan, who had been blinking his big eyes, finally could not hold it in any longer. Hearing that his father wanted to end this Dragon Gate leap, his childish voice immediately rang out in the night sky, interrupting Li Guang's words. Father. I'm willing to try. The consequences of these words could be imagined. The Water Tribe experts who had been preparing to leave after seeing the Pegasus return froze, and the experts hidden in the air also froze. The crown princes and princesses of the Li Palace in front all turned their heads. Everyone's eyes were focused on little Yuan, who had a ponytail, a golden chain around his neck, and a black doodoo. The experts in the distant waters immediately laughed, and someone even loudly said, Li Guang, this should be your little son who still smells of his mother's milk. His courage is truly commendable. Hee. The people around him roared with laughter. This kid has gone crazy. I don't know who didn't watch him well enough to let him escape. Even his brothers and sisters were complaining, blaming him for making everyone lose face. The third princess angrily pulled on little Yuan and reprimanded, Little Yuan, what nonsense are you talking about? After a while, Li Guang and his wife looked at each other, then Li Guang shouted, how improper. I'll take care of you when we get back. Father. Didn't the ancient teachings of my Nether River Black Carp clan say? Any disciple of my Nether River Black Carp clan can try, no one is allowed to stop them. Little Yuan indignantly argued, Little Yuan is also a disciple of the Nether River Black Carp clan, so why can't I try? As a child, he had no idea of his parents' painstaking efforts. It wasn't that his parents wanted to stop him, but that they knew that with his current cultivation, it was simply impossible for him to make the dragon leap, so they didn't want him to waste this chance. Once he grew up and his cultivation reached a certain level, his parents naturally wouldn't stop him anymore. For a moment, Li Guang was at a loss for words. It must be known that no matter how great Li Guang was, he couldn't surpass the teachings of his ancestors, and he didn't dare to openly oppose them. The Empress standing next to Li Guang immediately frowned and waved her hand, saying, Little Yuan, what are you doing? Come here, come to mother's side. The third princess immediately grabbed little Yuan's arm, wanting to drag him to her mother's side so that he wouldn't embarrass himself here. This unlucky child could finally get out of here. Yu Qianqiu did his best to turn his head to the side, suppressing his laughter so that it wouldn't look good in front of the Li Palace's water tribe. However, his snickering appearance was no different from that of an old fox that had stolen a chicken. To the side, Zhangyan Axayan also shook his head with a smile, lamenting that a newborn calf really wasn't afraid of a tiger, always doing things that made people laugh their teeth off. Brother Yu, have you forgotten that you said you would help me? Yu Qianqiu instantly couldn't laugh anymore. He felt his arm tighten and slowly turned his head around. He saw that the third princess was pulling little Yuan, while little Yuan was tugging at his sleeve, looking at him pitifully. He immediately pulled at his sleeve guiltily, but it wasn't good to be violent in front of his parents. For a moment, he couldn't break free, so he awkwardly said, You must have remembered wrongly. When did I ever say I would help you? Be good. Hurry and go to your mother's side. The third princess was also angry, her pretty face turning frosty as she said, "Little Yuan, be good." As she spoke, she was about to forcefully take little Yuan away. No. Little Yuan stubbornly shook his head and stared at Yu Qianqiu with infinite grievance. "Brother Yu, you said you had a way to help me make the dragon leap. Could it be that you were lying to little Yuan?" With these words, the third princess' hand, which was about to use force, froze. She raised her head in shock to look at Yu Qianqiu. It wasn't just her. Everyone's eyes were on Yu Qianqiu. The white-clothed scholar, who was hidden in the darkness, was mostly focused on the Pegasus carriage of the dragon transformation sect. Nothing else could attract his attention. At this moment, the silver-armored soldier next to him suddenly exclaimed, "Who is this person? I can't even see through his cultivation. When did the immortal realm have such a powerful person?" "Which one?" the scholar asked faintly and looked in the direction that the silver-armored soldier was pointing at. His pupils suddenly shrank and a faint white light appeared in his eyes. When the white light disappeared, he heaved a sigh of relief. He must have used some special camouflage technique. In fact, he is only at the early minor immortal stage. He is just a pawn that has just stepped into the immortal gate. There is no need to make a fuss. So that's how it is. The silver-armored soldier nodded slowly. His gaze more or less focused on Tsangyan Axayan. He was a little surprised by his intermediate immortal emperor cultivation. He muttered, "That's the attire of the Heartless Palace." "It's not the Heartless Palace. Could it be the chief consecrator, Tsangyan Axayan?" After a short pause, his gaze fell on Yu Qianqiu again. He nodded with some understanding. "The early minor immortal stage. I know who this person is. He should be the World Commerce Chamber's sect leader Yu Qianqiu, who is causing trouble in the immortal realm." "Oh. The Yu Qianqiu who Lord Jin ordered to compose." The scholar's gaze fell on Yu Qianqiu again. At this time, he showed some interest. If Yu Qianqiu knew that this person had also heard of his great name, he wondered if he would feel honored. "Damn it! Why are you all staring at me?" Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. Back then, it was just a trick he had casually used to trick a child. What he said was over, and he did not take it to heart. In fact, he did not have any way to help him leap through the dragon gate. He thought he was just a child. He could have just fooled him for a while. Who knew that this stupid child would keep thinking about it? Yu Qianqiu now understood. No wonder this unlucky child kept pestering him. He really took what he said seriously. Seeing the surrounding gazes, he lowered his head and smiled awkwardly at little Yuan. "Little Yuan, you must have heard wrong. I only said that I hope you can leap through the dragon's gate. When did I say I had a way to help you leap through the dragon's gate? Hurry and go back to your mother. Listen to me." How could he dare to admit that he had used the pious worship of the Nether River Black Carp clan to fool someone, and the person he had fooled was the fourth prince of Li Palace? Tsangyan Axayan sneered and secretly transmitted his voice. "Now you know how to be afraid. What happened to the daring and magnificent feat at the beginning? You actually wanted to eat the fourth prince of Li Palace. You have guts." Xin Yu, who had been standing silently to the side, also looked at Yu Qianqiu with a strange expression. "Woo-woo. No, you said it before." Little Yuan immediately began to sob. Letting go of his hand, he pointed at Yu Qianqiu's nose and sobbed. "You said that you were called Yu Qianqiu, the Yu from leaping through the dragon's gate. You said that the two of us were fated and that I should call you Big Brother Yu." He then turned to Tsangyan Axayan and Xin Yu. They all heard it. They can testify that it was clearly you who used a fishing rod too. The word fishing rod caused Yu Qianqiu to stagger. He hurriedly took little Yuan from the third princess's hands and pressed little Yuan's head against his chest. He even pretended to gently stroke little Yuan's head to comfort him, coaxing, "Little Yuan, be good, don't cry, don't cry." In reality, he was pressing little Yuan's mouth against his chest to prevent him from continuing. But it was still a little too late. To the vast majority of the underworld river's water tribes, the word fishing rod was a word they abhorred, especially to a school of carp. At this moment, it was not only the Nether River Black Carp clan that had darkened their faces. Even quite a few of the experts of the underworld river's water tribes in the distance gradually became savage. Fishing rods, fishing nets, and the like were absolute humiliation to them, a very, very great humiliation. A normal person would avoid mentioning these words in front of them, but now, someone was using these things in the underworld river. Chapter 1007. Yu Qianqiu casually glanced at them a few times and felt too embarrassed to look again. He was very depressed in his heart. With his eyes, he could tell that he had angered everyone. It was supposed to be a good thing. It's all this unlucky child's fault. Yu Qianqiu's hand exerted a little more force and pressed little Yuan's head, which was about to raise, against his chest. He thought that it would be better to take this unlucky child as a hostage. It was better for him to leave first. After thinking about it, there was nothing for him to be afraid of. At most, he wouldn't be able to stay in the netherworld anymore. But it wasn't like there weren't any benefits. Grey Cloud Exian was dragged down by him. With so many experts around him, he would definitely die. How could Grey Cloud Exian not know his current situation? Looking at the atmosphere around him, he no longer had the mood to watch the show. He had already ravaged Yu Qianqiu 10,000 times in his heart, but it was still not enough. He felt that he was going to die because of Yu Qianqiu this time. He slowly hid his hands in his sleeves, ready to fight to the death. Beside him, Shen Yu's face was pale. He had a premonition that he would be dragged into this. It would be hard for him not to die. The scholar, who was hiding in the air, curled the corners of his mouth into a smile. He stared at the scene below and said, "I'm afraid that the handsome talent that Jin Taisheng had personally selected is going to die a violent death. I wonder how Jin Taisheng will feel when he hears about this. When this matter reaches the immortal realm, it will definitely cause a huge commotion. I'm afraid that Jin Tai will feel embarrassed. When that happens, will he?" Silver Armor Soldier frowned at the scholar and said, "Will Jin Tai come to the netherworld to punish us?" "Punish us? That depends on who it is." The scholar's gaze swept across the water clan on the netherworld river and he laughed. "If he dares to come to punish us, I will open the passage between the immortal world and the netherworld and welcome him in. I will not interfere and will even provide him with all the conveniences. But I'm afraid he won't have the guts." "That's right." The silver-armored army of 1,000 soldiers cast their gazes at the ancient Nether River, which was so long that they could not see the end of it. Standing on the back of the one-horned water rhinoceros, Li Guang and his wife's faces were ashen. They looked at Yu Qianqiu as if they wanted to skin him alive. Li Guang gnashed his teeth and shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, you dare to insult my son with a fishing rod. You should be hacked into pieces, and your bones burned to ashes." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes on the spot. He didn't like hearing that. The world was big, so what if he used a fishing rod? What's more, your son didn't do anything. What right do you have to cut me into 1,000 pieces and grind my bones to dust? However, even though he thought this way, he still had to think of a way to salvage the situation. Unless he really didn't want to stay in the netherworld anymore, he had to think of a way to salvage the situation. He coughed and said, "You've misunderstood me. I really didn't mean to insult your son. In fact, I didn't know he was your son. Just imagine, if your son were to reveal his true form and mingle with a school of underworld river black carps, how could someone like me, who has never seen him before, know that he is the fourth prince of the Li Palace? Actually, release my fourth brother first." The crown prince of the Li Palace suddenly shouted angrily, interrupting, "My Li Palace imperial family is not something you can blaspheme." Yu Qianqiu suddenly turned his head and angrily shouted, "Who do you think you are? I am talking to your old man. When did it become your turn to interrupt? Could it be that the person in charge of the Li Palace isn't your father Li Guang, but you, the crown prince Li Zhong?" He was also a person with a reverse scale. How could a random person appear out of nowhere and yell at him? He immediately returned the favor. These words were vicious, and in the emperor's household, it would definitely be considered a death sentence. Crown Prince Li Zhong was almost speechless by these words, and his embarrassment turned into anger as he bared his teeth at his brothers and sisters. If we allow him to kidnap fourth brother and escape today, as his elder brothers and sisters, we will not have the face to see others in the future. Surround him, don't let him escape. After saying these words in front of everyone, the crown princes and princesses immediately surrounded Yu Qianqiu and the others. The third princess stood in front of Yu Qianqiu, coldly staring at him. Yu Qianqiu looked around and sneered, "A bunch of playthings from the same nest, do you think you're worthy of pretending to be brothers and sisters? I, Yu Qianqiu, am an indomitable spirit. I won't use a child as a hostage." As he spoke, he pushed Xiao Yuan, who was almost suffocating, into the arms of the third princess. The third princess was a little surprised, but she slowly carried Xiao Yuan out of the encirclement. Seeing that the other side had no hostages, Crown Prince Li Zhong suddenly laughed sinisterly. The underworld is not a place where people from the immortal realm can be arrogant. Old song. Yu Qianqiu directly ignored him and interrupted, "Some people don't know the immensity of heaven and earth just because they have the title of crown prince. We are sent here by the immortal emperor and represent the immortal emperor. How can we let others humiliate us? If anyone dares to spout nonsense again, why don't you let him have a taste of your heartless palace's 3 swords in 1 sword unsheathing form? Let's see if he's good with words or if he's really capable with his hands." Hearing this, the underworld's water tribe's powerhouses were slightly shocked. They might not have heard of who Tsangyin Aksayan was, but they had definitely heard of the celestial world's heartless palace's sect master, Wang Qing, especially his 3 swords in 1 sword unsheathing form. In order to comprehend the sword technique, Wang Qing had once rampaged through the underworld. Many powerhouses had died under Wang Qing's 3 swords in 1 sword unsheathing form. None of them had the confidence to block this move. Hearing this, based on everyone's information, they could roughly confirm that these 2 fellows were indeed Heartless Palace's chief high priest Tsangyin Aksayan and World Commerce's sect master Yu Qianqiu from the celestial world. In fact, Li Guang was also quite wary of Tsangyin Aksayan's 3 swords in 1 sword unsheathing form. Otherwise, he would have given the order to kill them already. When the crown princes and princesses heard the 3 swords in 1 sword unsheathing form, their expressions all changed. Tsangyin Aksayan had no way out. Yu Qianqiu had even brought up the celestial emperor. Even if he had to die, he had to brace himself and fight. This might give him a sliver of a chance at survival. If he retreated, celestial emperor Jin Tai would be the first to come after him. He had no confidence in escaping Jin Tai's pursuit. He immediately stepped forward with an imposing manner and stared at Crown Prince Li Zhong like lightning. Crown Prince Li Zhong immediately felt a powerful pressure bearing down on him after being targeted by Tsangyin Aksayan. He panicked. He had naturally heard of the Heartless Palace's sword unsheathing form, and he had no confidence in blocking it. Only now did he realize that he had indeed been impulsive. Tsangyin Aksayan. Li Zhong shouted. No matter how powerful Celestial Emperor Jin Tai is, he can't control the water tribe of the underworld. My Li Palace has never had any dealings with your Heartless Palace. I don't want to make things difficult for you, but it's best if you don't interfere in our affairs. Otherwise, no matter how famous your Heartless Palace's sword unsheathing form is, the water tribe of the underworld will not let you come and go as you please. These words were already a concession. It would be a lie if Tsangyin Aksayan said that he wasn't tempted, but he knew that if he retreated now, immortal Emperor Jin Tai would probably make his life a living hell. He had no choice but to say it out loud. Tsangyin Aksayan slowly closed his eyes. His blue robe and long beard fluttered without any wind. His hands were hidden in his sleeves as he stood there with his eyes closed. At this moment, Tsangyin Aksayan had the demeanor of Guan Yunchang. He stood there silently to show his attitude. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy. No one dared to be the first to test the sharpness of his sword unsheathing form. Everyone knew that once the sword unsheathing form was used, the river Styx would be dyed red with blood. Big brother, you said that you had a way to help me make the great leap. Little Yuan, who was in the third princess' hands, suddenly spoke in a childish voice. Yu Qianqiu immediately rolled his eyes. This unlucky child, if it weren't for your blabbering, things would not have turned out like this. At this moment, Li Guang, who was in a difficult position, gritted his teeth and said, Yu Qianqiu, did you say anything to my son about helping him make the great leap? The various experts on the surface of the underworld looked at each other. They could all hear that Li Guang's words were a little soft, and they couldn't help but feel a little helpless. No one here had the confidence to resist the sharpness of the Heartless Palace's sword unsheathing form, and the true experts of the underworld river had yet to show themselves. Otherwise, how could they have been frightened by Tsangyin Aksayan? Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned when he heard this. He immediately understood that the other party was giving him a way out of this embarrassing situation, and it was similarly giving him a way out of this embarrassing situation as well. If he didn't think of a way to salvage the situation, then both of them could only fight to the death. It's true that I said that, but there's a reason for it. Yu Qianqiu immediately explained with assurance, when I first arrived here, I suddenly saw a school of black carps in the river in front of me. One of them was faintly glowing. This glow was different from normal glows, as if it was possessed by a dragon. It was truly magical. I found it strange and wanted to see what it was. Thus, I took out a treasure that looked like a fishing rod and caught the thing that was possessed by the dragon. Who would have thought that it was actually the fourth prince of the Li Palace? Don't you think this is a huge misunderstanding? As soon as he said this, countless people silently cursed him for speaking nonsense, but no one pointed it out. They only heard Yu Qianqiu continue to ramble. When the fourth prince was caught by me, he felt extremely wronged. In order to comfort him, I told him that I had a way to help him make the great leap. Actually, it was just a way to coax a child. Who would have thought that he would take it seriously? I really didn't have the slightest intention of insulting the water tribe of the river Styx. I hope that your majesty will forgive my unintentional mistake. As he spoke, he cupped his hands. His attitude was very sincere. The surroundings were completely silent, and all eyes were on Li Guang. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Li Guang was about to go crazy. He thought to himself, you can just deny that you didn't do anything, and then I'll slowly investigate the truth. In the end, I'll just let it go. Now that you've come up with such a ridiculous reason, how am I supposed to get out of this situation? Don't even talk about fooling the adults with this reason. Little Yuan was the first to refuse, and stubbornly shouted, no. Brother you definitely have a way. He then turned to Li Guang and shouted, Imperial Father, little Yuan is also a member of the river Styx. According to the teachings of our ancestors, little Yuan also has the right to attempt the great leap. Chapter 1008. He had spoiled this unlucky child to the point that even the adults were worried about him. Yu Qianqiu sighed and shook his head. Right now, he was like a bystander who was watching the show. Actually, when Li Guang gave him a way out, it wasn't that he couldn't find a good reason with his mouth. In reality, when he saw how powerful Tsangyin Aksayan was and how no one dared to touch him, he immediately became vigilant. He had originally wanted to find a chance to borrow someone's knife to kill Tsangyin Aksayan after familiarizing himself with the netherworld's environment. However, he didn't expect the Heartless Palace's sword-drawing technique to be so powerful in the netherworld. Who knew if anyone would dare to touch Tsangyan Aksayan in the future? Thus, he suddenly had an evil thought and wanted to take this opportunity. However, he didn't want to cut off his future in the netherworld. It was truly a difficult choice. Helplessly, he came up with a far-fetched reason and kicked the ball back to Li Guang. He was prepared to do whatever he wanted, but once he realized that the situation wasn't right, he would immediately dive into the water and escape. Let him go, let him try. Li Guang, who had nowhere to vent his anger, waved his hand. He was already having a headache, and this youngest son kept bringing up the ancestral teachings to pressure him. He had never seen such an unfilial son before. This was truly intolerable, so he decided to let him do as he pleased. The Empress was a little anxious, but seeing Li Guang like this, she wanted to say something but hesitated. In order to maintain his authority, she finally shut her mouth and didn't say anything. The third princess was still hesitating as she looked at her parents. However, Xiao Yuan got off her arm and ran toward Yu Qianqiu on the water. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. The corner of his mouth twitched as he thought to himself, "What are you doing here again?" As everyone expected, Xiao Yuan passed through the crowd of his brothers and sisters and grabbed onto Yu Qianqiu's sleeve. He pointed at the dragon transformation gate and said, "Help me." Yu Qianqiu looked at Xiao Yuan and shook his head. He had never seen such a stubborn child. To put it nicely, it was called stubborn. He suspected that this child was the illegitimate child of the deceased prime minister and the empress. Otherwise, why would his temper be so similar to that of the prime minister? Forget it. It's good that you give up on this idea, so that I don't have to be the center of attention all the time. Yu Qianqiu shrugged helplessly at the crowd. It didn't matter. Just like that, he was dragged away by the persistent Xiao Yuan. Under everyone's gaze, the two of them arrived at the foot of the transforming dragon sect that was enveloped by the colored glass treasure light. One big and one small raised their heads and looked up. From their angle, they could no longer see the heavenly horse treasure carriage. But the way the two of them stood there, it was hard to believe that they weren't father and son. Jump! With his hands behind his back, Yu Qianqiu nodded towards the top of the mountain and said perfunctorily. He was ready to let the little guy fail and give up as soon as possible. Xiao Yuan looked up at him, her large eyes blinking excitedly. "Brother Yu, help me." "What a joke. I don't have that kind of ability." Looking at the colored glass treasure light, Yu Qianqiu was a bit scared. His mind was filled with the scene of the prime minister being annihilated. Even a guy with the cultivation of the early stage of the underworld emperor ended up like that. What kind of joke was he, who was in the early stage of the minor immortal realm, playing? He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "How do you want me to help?" Xiao Yuan bit his finger and looked back at the colored glass treasure light. After thinking for a while like an adult, he said, "Xiao Yuan's cultivation is too low. I can't go up." "Why don't?" He was very self-aware. He knew that his cultivation was too low to go up. After a pause, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and said expectantly, "Why don't you carry me up?" Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu's expression froze. He said in surprise, "Carry you up? Are you kidding me? This is the jumping dragon gate. Have you ever heard of anyone from your Nether River Black Carp clan being carried up after jumping the dragon gate? If that's the case, how is it you jumping the dragon gate? Isn't it me jumping the dragon gate?" Let alone him, the surrounding people were also shaking their heads. They all thought to themselves that the little guy was just a little guy. Li Guang's originally green face turned a little black. This was too ridiculous. Xiao Yuan pouted and said very naively, "It was you, brother Yu, who told me. Your name is Yu Qianqiu, Yu as in jumping dragon gate. There's nothing wrong with you bringing Xiao Yuan along to jump the dragon gate." Yu Qianqiu was stunned by this little guy's extraordinary comprehension ability. His mind went blank for a while. You're my grandpa. So that's how you understand it. No matter what, it's just that I have a cheap mouth. This was the first time he realized that he had lost so badly in a verbal argument. Most importantly, there was no reason to reason with this little brat. He couldn't even be calculative with him. Brother Yu. Help me. Xiao Yuan tugged on his sleeve and acted like a spoiled child. He was practically invincible when it came to using both the carrot and the stick. Yu Qianqiu resisted the urge to beat up the little guy in front of so many people. He pointed at the colored glass treasure light in front of him and said, "You mean, you want me to carry you up the mountain from here?" "Yes." Xiao Yuan nodded excitedly, taking it as a yes. He dove into the river Styx and turned into a huge black carp about a meter long. He swam a few rounds around Yu Qianqiu, who was standing on the surface of the water. Then, he jumped out of the water and floated in front of Yu Qianqiu. He wagged his head and tail excitedly and said, "Brother Yu, carry me up." "Damn you." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes a few times. He raised his hand to wipe away the water droplets that the little guy's tail had splashed onto his face. This Styx River black carp, which was originally rather cute in appearance, was now completely unreasonable in his eyes. "Brother Yu. Don't hesitate. You can do it. I believe that you're the best," Xiao Yuan said with certainty. Although his words were simple, this kind of pure encouragement coming from the mouth of a little kid was quite effective against a black-hearted person like Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu scratched his face embarrassedly and asked tentatively, "Why don't we give it a try? But let me say the ugly words first. Failure is certain. Don't blame it on me when the time comes." This was definitely his style. He would always give a warning first. "Yes. As long as Brother Yu tries his best, it's fine." Xiao Yuan cheered and threw herself into Yu Qianqiu's arms without a care for the cost. Yu Qianqiu had no choice but to hug him. After a moment of hesitation, he moved step by step toward the uneven and swaying light. It was as if there was a bottomless abyss in front of him. When he reached the front, he stopped again and said with some difficulty, "Xiao Yuan, why don't you try jumping first? If it doesn't work, I'll try again." When these words were spoken, it was unknown how many people looked at him with disdain. Either you don't go, or you don't even have the courage to go through the motions. Who do you think you are? Even Sangyun Axian felt that it would be embarrassing to be with him in the future. "Big Brother Yu, this won't do. If I fall into the water when I try, it will be considered a failure according to the ancestral teachings." "I can't try again," Xiao Yuan said very seriously. He. Then forget it." Yu Qianqiu laughed awkwardly. He held the big carp in one hand and reached out a finger. He raised his cultivation to the limit and slowly reached into the colored glazed light. He was going to test the waters first. The result surprised him. The temperature in the light was indeed very high, and the pressure was not small, but it was completely within his tolerance range. He inserted his finger into the light repeatedly, then changed to a palm, then to a fist. Finally, he stuck his entire arm in and shook it a few times. With this action, he did not care how many people were looking at him with disdain. His life was his, and how could he be compared to those who were just watching the show? After finally confirming that there were no problems, he directly dashed in with Xiao Yuan in his arms. Amidst Xiao Yuan's cheers, he raised his arms high and lifted Xiao Yuan above his head. He slowly flew up against the pressure. He had no pressure now. In any case, he had already tried. If he found that something was wrong, he could just go into the water and admit defeat. There was no need to risk his life. However, what he did not know was that the moment he charged in and the light enveloped his body, a golden light immediately erupted from his dantian, as if it had been activated by something. However, it only flashed for a moment before the golden light disappeared. The big carp he held above his head was covered in a faint layer of golden leaf. He was in the light, so he felt that there was a glistening yellow in front of him. It was as if he was wearing tinted glasses, so he did not notice anything. Instead, the expressions of the people outside all became solemn. They looked at Xiao Yuan in surprise. They could clearly see that, just a moment ago, Xiao Yuan's body had been covered in a faint layer of golden hair. At this moment, the yellow light around Xiao Yuan's body was clearly stronger than its surroundings, like a thin halo of light protecting him. How could this be? The silver-armored soldier in the air said in surprise. The scholar's gaze instantly sharpened as he stared at Xiao Yuan, as if he wanted to cut him open and examine him. Everyone had an expression of disbelief on their faces, especially the members of the Li Palace's water tribe, who did not even dare to breathe loudly. Li Guang and his wife had very complicated expressions. Although everyone had seen this strange phenomenon, until the very end, no one could be sure what effect this strange phenomenon would have, or whether some miracle would really occur. Xiao Yuan. Do you feel any discomfort? If you do, tell me immediately. Remember. It's fine if you fail. As long as you try your best, you won't have any regrets. Don't try to be brave. Yu Qianqiu raised Xiao Yuan up, bit by bit. This unscrupulous fellow said all sorts of nice words and all sorts of reasons, as if he was doing it for his own good. But he had Xiao Yuan act as the vanguard, because the previous example had made it clear that the higher they went, the more dangerous it would be. He was determined not to take the slightest risk for such an unreliable matter. Xiao Yuan clearly knew that the higher they went, the more dangerous it would be. His two carp eyes nervously stared up and he said, "Brother Yu, I understand. But for now, I don't seem to feel any discomfort. Brother Yu, do you feel anything?" I don't feel anything right now either. Let's take it slow, there's no rush." Yu Qianqiu laughed awkwardly. He lowered his head to look at his feet. It was only 5 or 6 meters, and he thought that if there was more pressure, he would have to go up a little more. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the speed at which the two of them ascended was truly unsightly. Occasionally, they would stop and ask each other if there was any discomfort. They were truly very careful. Chapter 1009. The two slowly ascended like this, attracting everyone's gaze. After a while, quite a few people realized that their eyes were a little tired from watching these two leap over the dragon gate. They wanted nothing more than to urge them to hurry up. If they could do it, then they could do it. If they couldn't, then they couldn't. Stop dawdling here. At first, the Li Palace Water Tribe members were very nervous, but after watching for a while, they got used to it. They could only look at each other speechlessly, as if they had never heard of someone leaping over the dragon gate like this. The tense bodies of the surrounding people gradually relaxed, and some even seemed bored to death. Who knew how long it would take to see the final result of these two? Why do I feel like this action is a little like the Statue of Liberty? A woman raises one arm, a man raises both arms. It's probably like this. Yu Qianqiu also felt that his actions were rather slow, and he even had time to let his imagination run wild. Looking around at the listless crowd, he couldn't help but sigh. It was better to just stand on the side and watch. Unlike him, who was in danger and was so nervous. Next time, he wouldn't randomly show his love. Looking at his feet, he realized that they were already more than 10 meters from the surface of the underworld river. Yu Qianqiu solemnly raised his head and asked, "Little Yuan, how do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" "Oh. I'm fine, but I feel like I'm going a little slow." Little Yuan stared at him with his carp eyes and said honestly. The nervousness that could be seen in his eyes before was now beginning to wander around leisurely. "It's good to go a little slower, we're not in a hurry. It's better to be safe than sorry." Safety first. Yu Qianqiu said solemnly. Little Yuan very obediently gave an "oh," and the two clowns continued to slowly ascend. Hearing these words, some distant tyrant of the water tribe, probably someone with a fiery temper, couldn't bear to watch any longer and roared, "Yu Qianqiu, are you still a man? If you're a man, then be a little braver and go straight up. If you can do it, then you can do it. If you can't, then forget it." The voice reverberated across the surface of the underworld river. Who? Don't just stand there and talk. Yu Qianqiu raised his hands in surrender and quickly looked around and cursed. Fuck. You're a man. You're brave. If you're capable, come at me. Let's swap. I also know how to make sarcastic remarks. I guarantee that I will urge you to hurry up. If you die in an accident, I will take care of your corpse and choose a good place to bury you. Ha! The group of waterkind warriors who had been watching the show burst into laughter. The person who roared seemed to be amused and scolded with a smile. Bullshit. I want to see how you will die. I have already chosen a good place. It is at the foot of the dragon transformation sect. I am waiting to collect your corpse. Everyone. Li Guang floated into the air and cupped his hands towards the crowd. Today is an important day for my Li Palace's water tribe. I hope that everyone can give me some face. This matter concerns my son's life. Please do not disturb him. As soon as he said that, the laughter gradually calmed down. Even if he did not give face to Li Guang, he still had to give face to the Pegasus that came from nowhere, 20 meters from the water. Yu Qianqiu looked down. He remembered that when the first Nether River black carp leapt through the dragon gate, it seemed to feel the pressure when it rose 20 meters and slowed down. He immediately raised his head and asked, "Little Yuan, how do you feel?" Little Yuan's carp eyes turned around and carefully sensed. After a pause, he said, "Nothing much, it's still the same." "It's still the same." Yu Qianqiu muttered. He felt that something was wrong and warned again, "Little Yuan, I am preparing to increase my speed. If you feel anything wrong, tell me immediately." Brother Yu, I understand." Little Yuan replied excitedly. Truly, newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. Yu Qianqiu sighed inwardly and immediately tried to increase his speed. 1 meter, 2 meters. He could only watch as the distance between him and the surface of the Nether River increased. When he rose to around 50 meters, he did not need to ask Little Yuan. He himself felt that something was wrong. At such a height, even with Little Yuan supporting him, he should have felt the pressure increase. Why was it still the same as before, with no reaction at all? Suspicious, he could not help but stop and carefully think about what was going on. In the eyes of the crowd, they initially thought that the two of them had already felt the pressure and could no longer continue, but looking at Yu Qianqiu's expression and behavior, it did not seem like it was difficult for them to continue. Little Yuan saw that they had risen so much and Yu Qianqiu had stopped and immediately shouted excitedly, "Brother Yu, I'm fine. I can go a little faster." It seemed that they were really fine. Yu Qianqiu could not figure out what had gone wrong, so he made up his mind and gritted his teeth. Following Little Yuan's words, he pushed Little Yuan up the mountain step by step at a normal walking speed. 60 meters from the surface of the Nether River, 80 meters. Everyone's eyes were fixed on them. The speed at which the two of them rose at a leisurely and relaxed pace was unbelievable. Li Guang and his wife looked at each other. There was not a trace of happiness on their faces, but astonishment instead. The crown princes and princesses of the Li Palace were also dumbfounded. However, at this time, Yu Qianqiu suddenly understood what the problem was. He believed that the carp leaping over the dragon gate was a task that could only be completed by the carp alone. Relying on the help of others was ineffective, or in other words, it was ineffective if humans intervened. In other words, Little Yuan was probably happy for nothing. So that was the case. Once Yu Qianqiu figured it out, he immediately felt no psychological burden. Maintaining a certain level of vigilance, he pushed little Yuan and directly flew up. 20 meters. 10 meters, Brother Yu is almost there. Little Yuan was already cheering in advance. Yu Qianqiu also took the opportunity to put him down and hold him in his arms, their figures stabilizing in the air. At this time, the two of them had already reached the same height as the top of the mountain. Directly in front of them was the carriage of the Pegasus emitting a rich and simple aura. Two transparent precious horses were staring at them with their crystal-like eyes, their bodies shining brightly like statues standing at the top of the mountain. Everyone was staring at them without blinking. There were no cheers, and no applause. They were quietly waiting for what would happen next. Although the speed at which the two of them ascended was a little too slow, it was too easy. They couldn't help but ask themselves if this counted as leaping over the Dragon Gate. After being in a stalemate with the carriage of the Pegasus at the top of the mountain for a while, little Yuan leisurely whispered into Yu Qianqiu's ear, "Should we go over?" Yu Qianqiu was also somewhat at a loss. He didn't know what to do next. He looked at the surface of the Nether River beneath his feet, then at the top of the mountain. He thought that before they reached the top of the mountain, they might not have succeeded in leaping over the Dragon Gate. He then pushed little Yuan, who was in his arms, forward, and the two of them slowly floated to the top of the mountain. Everyone watched as Yu Qianqiu carefully placed his feet on the top of the mountain. At this time, little Yuan had also transformed back into his human form and shyly was placed on the top of the mountain by Yu Qianqiu. Just as little Yuan's feet touched the ground, the two Pegasus simultaneously straightened their forebodies and stomped their hooves, letting out a long neigh that resounded through the entire night sky for a long time. Just as the long neigh stopped, the glazed light that enveloped the Dragon Gate slowly retreated like flowing water, finally condensing into a resplendent ball of light on the carriage of the Pegasus. The condensed glazed light wriggled for a while, and suddenly, a huge head gradually rose from the glazed light, ferocious horns, a protruding forehead, a sharp nose, huge eyes, and a long mouth filled with dense fangs. Damn it, dragon! This was not the first time that Yu Qianqiu had seen such a thing, and he immediately recognized that it was a dragon head. However, he did not expect to see it for the second time, and at such a close distance at that. Just as he was about to slowly retreat and get ready to leave as soon as he realized something was wrong, he suddenly felt something touch his thigh. Wah! Wah! A loud and a small cry sounded on the mountain peak. Yu Qianqiu and little Yuan dodged at the same time. When the former saw that it was little Yuan, he immediately slapped his chest and scolded, "Why are you sneaking behind me? Are you trying to scare me to death?" Little Yuan did not care so much, and flashed behind him again, grabbing onto his clothes and poking his head out from behind. Looking at the ferocious head, he said carefully, "Little Yuan is scared." He was rather honest, and what he meant was to borrow his back to hide. Everyone was looking at the wondrous sight on the peak of the mountain in shock. They were also startled by the two people's shouts. They thought that something had happened to the two of them, so when they heard the two of them, they immediately looked at them with disdain. Even the scholar and silver armor army, who were hiding in the dark, could not help but look at each other. The scholar did not know whether to laugh or cry, and he muttered, "What a pair of clowns." After being frightened, Yu Qianqiu was more or less immune to it. He gathered his courage to take a closer look at the dragon head, and immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He discovered that it was only a lifelike shape formed by the glazed light, and was slightly transparent. It was not real at all. He immediately patted little Yuan's head and said, don't be afraid, I'm here. Brother Yu. Then what were you afraid of? Little Yuan asked a question that he should not have asked, and in return, Yu Qianqiu sneered in disdain, "Tsk. I saw that you were not here, and I was afraid that something happened to you." At this moment, the dragon head slowly rose from the resplendent ball of light, and the body that it was dragging along also began to appear in the sky, and the dragon claws also appeared one by one. As the dragon rose into the sky, the resplendent ball of light that it had emerged from gradually shrank, until the dragon's tail appeared, and a small ball of light adorned the dragon's tail. At this point, the glazed light covering the Pegasus carriage had completely disappeared, and it had completely condensed into a glistening yellow dragon that was 50 to 60 meters long above the dragon transformation gate. It stood majestically in the night sky, and looked down on the entire netherworld. It was abnormally shocking. Standing on the dragon transformation gate, Yu Qianqiu and little Yuan looked up with their mouths wide open. Everyone's gaze was also focused on the dragon hovering in the sky. Chapter 10:10. Why was it like this? This question could only be answered by those who knew the process of leaping through the dragon gate. It was not hard to find the answer from the increasingly excited expressions of the Li Guang couple. However, no one was paying attention to the two of them. Everyone's gaze was on the dragon in the sky. Boom! A purple thunderbolt suddenly burst forth from the purple halo in the sky and struck the glassy coiling dragon. The coiling dragon was instantly covered in purple lightning, and after a while, it gradually disappeared into the body of the coiling dragon. The lifelike but lifeless glassy coiled dragon suddenly trembled and the scales on its body slightly opened up. A majestic and ancient aura surged out. The huge dragon suddenly raised its head and opened its mouth that was filled with fangs. Roar! Its roar shook the heavens and earth. The surface of the river Styx trembled like a sieve, causing everyone's eardrums to feel slightly numb. After a long roar, the huge dragon's head slightly sat down. Its coiled body was like a spring and fiercely shot into the pitch-black night sky like an arrow released from a bow. A strong gust of wind instantly blew, causing Yu Qianqiu, who was standing on the dragon transformation gate, to stagger. Xiao Yuan, on the other hand, tightly hugged onto his thigh. The huge dragon that was brimming with vitality was now completely golden, as if it had just escaped from a cage. It moved like a golden thunderbolt, shaking its head and wagging its tail as it swam freely in the pitch-black night sky. Its aura was astonishing and it was extremely awe-inspiring. The experts hiding in the night sky could no longer hide. Wherever the golden light passed, they all revealed themselves and dodged. Only now did the people below realize that there were so many people hiding in the sky. However, they did not mind as they did not do anything. It was not wrong for them to quietly watch the show from the sky. The flying dragon was in the wild, wandering in all directions. Even the place where the scholar and the silver armor army were hiding was no exception. Seeing the flying dragon charging over, the scholar waved his hand and directly pulled the huge head of the flying dragon to the side. The flying dragon's body wriggled past and had nothing to do with the two of them. The two of them were still hidden in the darkness and did not appear in everyone's sight. After swimming to its heart's content, the flying dragon swung its four limbs and charged toward the surface of the Netherworld River. With the dragon transformation gate as the center, it quickly circled around the dragon transformation gate. Its huge body was extremely nimble, and it could be said to be domineering. A huge whirlpool formed under the dragon transformation gate, and one could almost see the bottom of the river Styx. Huge waves rose from the surface of the river Styx and surged in all directions, shocking the people standing on the water and causing them to fly into the sky. The raging waves that surged in all directions reverberated, and once again caused huge waves to surge furiously at the dragon transformation gate. The flying dragon that was circling around the dragon transformation gate quickly passed through the huge waves, directly passing through the empty mountain belly of the dragon transformation gate. Its speed was extremely fast, breaking through the waves and winding around the dragon transformation gate. In the end, it quietly hovered above the dragon transformation gate, slightly nodding as it stared at the two people standing on the mountain peak. It could be said that he was as agile as a rabbit and as quiet as a virgin. The surging movements in all directions began to gradually calm down. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt that something was wrong. Before he could even take 2 steps, one of his thighs felt heavy, and he immediately said to Xiao Yuan, who was pulling him back, "Xiao Yuan, quickly let go, I have already helped you, there is nothing else I can help you with now. Xiao Yuan, quickly let go, I am going down." "No. I am scared." Xiao Yuan looked at the ferocious huge dragon in the sky in fear, and did his best to hold back Yu Qianqiu. "Damn. Quickly let go, are you trying to get me killed?" Yu Qianqiu almost wanted to beat him up, but the two of them had more or less developed some feelings for each other. He immediately roared at the Li Guang couple below, "Old Li Guang, quickly control your son, I have already done you a great favor, you can't be like this, quickly ask your son to let go." "Brother Yu. I am scared alone." Xiao Yuan immediately wailed. "Damn. You were the one who pestered me to send you up, now that you are here you say you are scared, what have you been doing?" Yu Qianqiu stretched out his hand to push his forehead twice, and seeing that the huge dragon in the sky was already moving, he immediately panicked and said, "Quickly let go, it is better for you to be scared alone than both of us." "Brother Yu. I am scared." Xiao Yuan cried and did not let go, and finally seemed to have thought of something. He raised his head and looked at Yu Qianqiu with tears. "Brother Yu. I will not transform into a dragon, bring me down with you. If you want to go down yourself. I am not stopping you, don't hug me." Yu Qianqiu pushed Xiao Yuan's head and said. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yuan hugged him even tighter, and said, "My whole body is weak, I can't move." *T. You are hugging me with so much strength. Quickly let go. Yu Qianqiu was a little anxious. "Xiao Yuan, what nonsense are you saying?" Below, Li Guang was angry and shouted, "Quickly let go of your brother Yu." Tsungyan Aksayan, who had been watching the commotion for a long time, shook his head and sighed. This scum seemed to cause trouble wherever he went, and now he had come to the netherworld to cause such a big commotion. After today, there would probably be no one in the netherworld who did not know of Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu looked at Li Guang, then looked at Xiao Yuan, who was hugging his leg. He did not care what Li Guang was thinking, and immediately glared at Xiao Yuan. "You said you wanted to go down, don't blame me in the future." Not caring whether Xiao Yuan agreed or not, he turned around and hugged Xiao Yuan. But before he could get up, he immediately heard a gust of wind. By the time he got up with Xiao Yuan in his arms, they were already surrounded by a golden haze. The flying dragon was circling around the mountain, its long body already wrapped around the two of them. Everyone stared at this scene in shock, feeling that this Yu Qianqiu was going to be dragged down by the fourth prince of the Li Palace. Suddenly, the circling flying dragon shrank, wrapping around the two of them like a ball of light. Suddenly, Yu Qianqiu's scream came from inside, "Little Yuan, don't hug me, let go." "Fuck, aw." As soon as Yu Qianqiu cried out, a figure was pulled out of the thick ball of light. If it was not Yu Qianqiu, who else could it be? They saw that he had landed in the empty carriage pulled by the Pegasus, a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He was lying weakly on the seat, his eyes closed, and it was impossible to tell whether he was dead or alive. Everyone looked at each other. They didn't know what had happened inside. However, they could imagine that with Xiao Yuan's cultivation, it was impossible for him to do this to Yu Qianqiu. It was most likely the doing of the ball of light formed by the flying dragon. But no one dared to go to the top of the mountain to check if Yu Qianqiu was dead or alive. Many people wanted to use their spiritual sense to check, but they all realized that it was impossible for their spiritual sense to approach the dragon transformation gate. There was a thick qi on the dragon transformation gate that prevented any spiritual sense or perception from peeking inside. Li Guang was also one of the people who wanted to investigate, but when he realized that his spiritual sense and perception could not approach, he clapped his hands in regret and sighed, "My Nether River Black Carp clan owes him." The empress next to him only glanced at Yu Qianqiu a few more times before staring at the shrinking ball of light. As a mother, she naturally placed her son first. Everything else was secondary. Zhang Yunxin, who witnessed all of this, furrowed his brows. He also released his spiritual sense and perception to check, but to no avail. However, at this moment, he really hoped that Yu Qianqiu would die. This was because no matter how unreasonable an immortal emperor was, they could not blame him for such a strange way of dying. This was a good way to die. There was no better way to die than this. Most people's attention was quickly gathered on the shrinking ball of light. To them, a mere Yu Qianqiu's death had nothing to do with them. But when the ball of light gradually shrank into a humanoid shape similar to Xiao Yuan's size, it suddenly exploded with a blinding light. After the blinding light quickly disappeared, a small black dragon that was over 10 meters long floated above the dragon transformation gate with its claws and fangs bared. Roar! It let out a long roar into the endless night sky. The sound was not soft, but it was somewhat desolate and lonely. The water tribe of the Li Palace, with the exception of Li Guang, and the crown prince and princess, all knelt in the direction of the dragon transformation gate, their emotions extremely agitated. Nay! Nay! The two transparent steeds pulling the carriage both reared up and neighed as if summoning something. The little black dragon in the air flashed with black light and immediately transformed back into Xiao Yuan's original appearance. It slowly descended to the summit and looked down at the people below as it wept, "Father, mother, big brother, big sister, I have to go." At this moment, his mind had already fused with things that originally did not belong to him. He already knew what he was going to do next. Xiao Yuan. The empress and her brothers and sisters couldn't help but call out. His mother was especially agitated, and Li Guang tightly hugged her with his lips tightly shut. Xiao Yuan wiped his tears. The two Pegasi had already pulled the carriage to him. He turned and climbed onto the carriage, then straightened up the reclining Yu Qianqiu and sobbed, "Big brother Yu, I'm afraid to go alone. I'll take you with me." At these words, everyone below almost fainted. They all stared up in shock. He was going to take Yu Qianqiu with him. Zhang Yunxian's eyebrows once more fiercely twitched. This couldn't be any better. It was unknown whether Yu Qianqiu was dead or alive. If he left in such a bizarre manner, the immortal palace would have even less reason to blame him. The two Pegasi did not express any objections, as if it was only right that they take Yu Qianqiu with them. They neighed in unison, stomped their hooves, and then flew into the air. They pulled the carriage around the dragon transformation gate and then flew directly toward the spinning violet halo in the sky. He took two of them with him at once. Just as everyone was dumbfounded, the sound of Yu Qianqiu waking up came from the sky. Damn it! It hurts so much. Why am I sitting here? Pegasi. Xiao Yuan, what's the meaning of this? Everyone saw Yu Qianqiu poking his head out from the back of the carriage, looking down with a terrified expression. Then, they saw half of Xiao Yuan's body poking out, clearly standing on the seat. They saw him hugging Yu Qianqiu's neck and sobbing, "Xiao Yuan is afraid to go alone. Big brother Yu, accompany Xiao Yuan." Chapter 10-11. Together. Where are we going? Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. He turned around and sat down. He wasn't in the mood to enjoy sitting on the heavenly horse's carriage. His eyes were fixed on the direction the heavenly horse was flying in. It was the purple halo spinning in the air. He instantly knew where he was going. Brother Yu. Little Yuan won't be able to see father, mother, big brother, and big sister in the future. Sob sob. Little Yuan grabbed his arm and cried. Let go of me. Yu Qianqiu said with a sinister expression. He didn't want to go to such a mysterious place that he didn't know anything about even if he was beaten to death. No. Little Yuan tightened his grip and shook his head stubbornly. Yu Qianqiu immediately laughed coldly. Now that things had come to this, how could he still be soft-hearted? Paw! He chopped at the back of little Yuan's neck with his palm, only to discover that a strange force had rebounded from the child's body, causing his palm to go numb. Little Yuan couldn't cry anymore. He looked at him in a daze, not knowing what to do. Yu Qianqiu was also dumbfounded. He looked at little Yuan again and realized that he couldn't see through little Yuan's cultivation. The corner of his mouth twitched. He suddenly took out a hell-steel melon hammer and mercilessly smashed it at the back of little Yuan's neck. Little Yuan's teary eyes were filled with disbelief. He couldn't believe that his respectable and adorable brother Yu would actually do such a thing to him. He could only watch helplessly as he fainted in his seat. The people below couldn't see this scene, but some of the experts hidden in the air saw it clearly. They all gritted their teeth. The scholar and the silver armor army also looked at each other speechlessly. Then, they saw Yu Qianqiu put away the hell-steel melon hammer in his hand. He flipped over and directly flew out of the carriage. He turned into a ray of light and shot towards the river Styx below. Everyone looked at Yu Qianqiu, who had returned to Grey Cloud Xion's side. They all looked at him as if they were looking at a monster. Sunyan Axion gulped as a look of disappointment flashed across his eyes. He never thought that he would return. There was a rumbling sound in the sky. Everyone stared at the sky and saw a strong light flash. Then, the carriage was swallowed by the purple halo. Immediately after, the spinning purple halo suddenly stopped spinning, and once again condensed into a dozen or so purple lightning bolts. It was as if a huge hand had grabbed a bunch of long threads, and fiercely pulled them to the same point in the night sky. The night sky was pitch black and calm. Only the sound of the netherworld river could be heard. In an instant, everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. The people in all directions didn't move. They were still in their original positions, reflecting on everything that had just happened. That Pegasus carriage that tore through the sky was enough for everyone to analyze for a while. As for Yu Qianqiu, he felt that he had been the most wronged. He felt that he had been dragged into this matter for no reason at all. Putting aside the fact that there were no benefits, he had even hit someone else's son. Perhaps the person would bear a grudge against him, so he cautiously and vigilantly guarded against all members of the Li Palace's water tribe. Li Guang's face was filled with excitement while the Empress sorrowfully stared in the direction her son had disappeared. The crown princes and princesses all had complicated expressions. Whether it was them or the various powerhouses, none of them could have imagined that the person who had succeeded in leaping through the Dragon Gate would be Li Guang's youngest son, who had not even reached the level of an underworld knight. It truly could be said that karma had long since been decided, and it was beyond anyone's control. Why was it like this? The crowd couldn't help but recall what Yu Qianqiu had said before. He had said that he had seen the fourth prince of the Li Palace glowing with a multicolored light, as if he had been possessed by a dragon. Previously, everyone had believed that Yu Qianqiu was talking nonsense, but everyone had seen the strange phenomenon that had occurred when the fourth prince of the Li Palace had leaped through the Dragon Gate. If Yu Qianqiu was playing tricks, then his acting was a little too good. Especially that scene of him clinging to life and being afraid of death, everyone still remembered it vividly. Based on everyone's experience, they could naturally see that Yu Qianqiu had not been faking it. From this, they could infer that the fourth prince of the Li Palace was destined to leap through the Dragon Gate. And the theory that the black carp of the underworld river would form good karma with others after leaping through the Dragon Gate had once again been verified. Everyone had no choice but to believe it. In other words, Yu Qianqiu's use of a fishing rod to target the fourth prince of the Li Palace truly had been a misunderstanding. Just as he had said, he had not intended to humiliate the water tribe of the underworld river. Congratulations to the black carp tribe of the underworld river. After so many years, a person of great fortune has once again transformed into a black dragon and left the netherworld. This is truly worthy of celebration. An indifferent and unhurried voice suddenly resounded through the night sky. It was not a voice, but it echoed in every direction, causing everyone's minds to shake. Especially that tone of voice. Although it was polite words of congratulations, it gave off a feeling of being high above all living beings. The various experts on the surface of the underworld river trembled and raised their heads to look around. The experts hidden in the darkness in the sky also looked around, all of them trembling in fear. At first, Yu Qianqiu did not think much of it, but after observing the changes in the expressions of Li Guang and the other experts, he was slightly alarmed. He immediately determined that this person who had yet to reveal himself was not ordinary. Li Guang looked around, then respectfully clasped his hands to the air and said, "Li Guang represents the Black Carp tribe of the Underworld River in thanking the Emperor of the Underworld. We did not know that the Emperor of the Underworld would grace us with his presence and did not lead the entire tribe to welcome you. This is truly a sin. Dare I ask, what advice does the Emperor of the Underworld have?" The Emperor of the Underworld. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He did not think that Li Guang would dare address the other party as the Emperor of the Underworld when he did not know who the other party was. He did not expect it to be the Emperor of the Underworld who had severely wounded his teacher in 3 moves, the legendary Supreme Master of the Underworld, the Emperor of the Underworld, who had come in person. Oh my! In his shock, he quickly glanced around, but he could not detect where the target was. He immediately looked at Sungyin Axayan and found that Sungyin Axayan also had a shocked expression. It was obvious that he did not expect the Emperor of the Underworld to come in person. "It's not advice, but I should congratulate you. Farewell." As soon as the indifferent voice fell, 2 white flowing lights appeared in a dark corner in the sky, disappearing quickly into the horizon. At the same time that the 2 white lights appeared, all the people bowed in the direction of the departing figures with cupped hands, saying, "Farewell, Underworld Emperor." Yu Qianqiu and Sungyin Axayan also followed suit, bowing respectfully to bid farewell. After everyone stood up, congratulatory voices continuously came from all directions towards Li Guang. Li Guang, on the other hand, continuously cupped his fists towards all directions in return. The surrounding water tribe experts all hid into the underworld river and left. Streaks of light also flew past in the sky. In a short while, almost everyone had left, leaving only the people of Li Palace and the people of Hidden Dragon Villa in the distant sky. "Let's go as well." Yu Qianqiu secretly whispered to Sungyin Axayan and Xinyu. The 3 of them had the same idea. They all felt that this was not a place to stay for long, and that it was better to leave as soon as possible. "Wait!" Li Guang shouted, and the 3 of them paused. What they were worried about had happened, and they slowly turned around to look at him. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "Old man Li Guang, no matter what, I played a part in Xiao Yuan's transformation into a dragon. Do you still want to hold on to other things and not let go? What did you play a part in?" Crown Prince Li Zhong snorted coldly and said, "You said it before, my 4th brother's body had a faint glow, as if he was possessed by a dragon. This means that my 4th brother is destined to leap over the dragon gate. Unless what you said before was a lie, and you used a fishing rod to insult the water race of the underworld river." Even without him saying it, Yu Qianqiu himself felt a little puzzled. Saying that there was a strange phenomenon on Xiao Yuan's body was originally nonsense. When he carried Xiao Yuan to leap over the dragon gate, he realized that there was no resistance and thought that it would be ineffective. Who knew that Xiao Yuan would succeed so easily and successfully transform into a dragon? What a joke! He still could not figure out what was going on. Could it be that the legend of forming good karma was true, and that he was the fated person in the legend? But it seemed a little ridiculous. Even so, it did not mean that he could let this so-called crown prince shout at him. He immediately narrowed his eyes and laughed coldly. Ungrateful and sharp-tongued. I told you long ago that you have no right to speak in front of me. The high temperature of the purple flames hidden within his body suddenly erupted in an earth-shattering manner, instantly enveloping the surface of the netherworld river. The power of the powerful purple flames was not child's play, not to mention that the high temperature was focused on Crown Prince Li Zhong. In that instant, Crown Prince Li Zhong felt as if he had fallen into an endless purgatory. His body was burning both inside and out, and he felt like he was about to be burned to ashes. Immediately, a transparent black protective aura surged out, intending to block the corrosion of the high temperature. When Yu Qianqiu subdued Xinyu, he had already understood that the extreme yang flames in his body could restrain the cultivators of the underworld. Thinking back to when he was in the human world, he had forced out the remaining power of the black fire many times without revealing it to fight against enemies. Along the way, he had been wondering if he could use the same method to test out the blue fire and purple fire in the netherworld. He did not want to test this move on Li Zhong, but this guy was too tactless. He had no grudges with him, but he had repeatedly contradicted him. You have the support of your parents, who are mid-stage underworld emperors, and I also have a golden fighter, who is a mid-stage immortal emperor, as well as the decree of the immortal world immortal emperor. Why should I be afraid of you? At that moment, it was not just Prince Li Zhong who felt it. All of the black carps of the Styx River felt the power that made their hearts palpitate. It was a kind of fate where the sunlight dispelled the haze. All of the water races felt a sense of fear that came from the depths of their souls. They all looked at Yu Qianqiu in fear. Li Guang and his wife stared at Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. Was this the power of a minor immortal cultivator? Had he been hiding his cultivation all this time? Xinyu was also trembling. He felt something from Yu Qianqiu that made his heart tremble. Zhangyan Axian suddenly stared at Yu Qianqiu, a shocked expression on his face. Use it well, and you will be invincible. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes as he stared at Li Zhong's black protective aura. He suddenly recalled what his master, Bai Changchun, had said. With a thought, the purple flames that were in a stalemate with Li Zhong's protective aura instantly condensed into an invisible high-energy blade. Chapter 10-12. I wonder how powerful this blade is. Yu Qianqiu thought as he stared coldly at Li Zhong. Everyone around him suddenly felt that the terrifying power had disappeared, and they couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Li Zhong, who was hiding in the transparent black protective aura, also let out a sigh of relief. He stared at Yu Qianqiu with sparkling eyes. The terrifying power just now made him feel a lingering fear, and he no longer had the confidence to fight against Yu Qianqiu. Just as he was thinking about how to get himself out of the situation, the swoosh sound rang out. A hole suddenly appeared on the black protective aura, as effortlessly as cutting a piece of paper. In an instant, a long hole was cut open by something unknown. The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth suddenly curved into a cold smile. Sure enough, it was just as he had expected. Ah! Li Zhong screamed, and he was almost scared out of his wits. The protective aura was easily broken, and he didn't even notice how the opponent made the move just now. He desperately urged the protective aura to quickly fuse together. Not to mention him, Li Guang, his wife, and the people of the water race, as well as Zhangyan Axian, were all shocked. Yu Qianqiu sneered and stretched out his palm towards Li Zhong. His 5 fingers spread out like a claw, and the invisible blade suddenly spun like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. The sound of swoosh swoosh was endless, and in an instant, Li Zhong's protective aura was cut into pieces, like a broken eggshell, and immediately collapsed. The invisible blade caused such a big movement, anyone would notice its existence. Li Zhong, who was panic-stricken and at a loss, was about to deal with it, but he saw Yu Qianqiu seize the opportunity. His 5 fingers were like claws, and he shouted sternly, absorbing Star's great magic. White smoke suddenly erupted from Li Zhong's body. Before the white smoke could disperse, a withered corpse immediately rushed out of the white smoke. With a hoarse and dry voice, he shouted, "Father, save me." The speed at which he was escaping was worlds apart from his previous speed. Almost at the same time, the invisible blade had already chased after Li Zhong to kill him. Li Guang was shocked. He had wanted to let his son test out Yu Qianqiu's strength, but he didn't expect that his son didn't even have the time to fight back and was already too late to escape. How could he not be shocked? However, with Li Guang's level of cultivation, the invisible blade had caused quite a commotion. There was nowhere for him to hide. How could he let his son be killed? He teleported and blocked Li Zhong's back. His black imperial robe fluttered even though there was no wind. He did not move at all, but a pillar of water shot out from the netherworld river like a cannonball. There was a loud bang. Li Guang's attack was no small matter. The invisible blade was instantly hit by the water pillar and could no longer condense into a blade. With Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, he could no longer control it. In an instant, the intense heat spread in all directions, and the water pillar that shot into the sky was almost completely turned into mist by the high temperature. The mist quickly dispersed, and the entire water region seemed to be in a high-temperature steamer. As soon as the shock wave from the collision spread out, Zhangyan Xayan, who had seen Li Guang make a move, immediately appeared in front of Yu Qianqiu. With a cold expression, he reached his right hand into his left sleeve and touched the storage bracelet on his wrist. There were 10 spaces in the storage bracelet, and one of them contained 5 swords. Any one of them could be earth-shattering. Li Guang waved his sleeve, and the mist in front of him was immediately dispersed. He immediately saw Grey Cloud Xian's action, and his pupils shrank. He immediately shouted, "We have no enmity with each other, so why must we fight to the death?" Seeing that the other party was not going to fight, Grey Cloud Xian's hand, which was already making a sword-drawing gesture on the storage bracelet, paused. Yu Qianqiu slowly walked out from behind him. He looked at Li Guang and said in a low voice, "Everyone has seen and heard it with their eyes and ears. It's not that we want to fight to the death with you, but that son of yours has repeatedly spoken rudely and has gone too far. It's simply intolerable." "Zhong how are you?" The Empress, who was supporting Crown Prince Li Zhong, cried out in pain. Everyone looked over and saw that Crown Prince Li Zhong's face was contorted. His entire body had become skin and bones, and he was no different from a dried corpse. He stared at Yu Qianqiu with fear in his eyes, and a hoarse voice came from his shriveled throat. "Mother, move aside. I want to draw water. I'm about to die." The Empress retreated hesitantly. Crown Prince Li Zhong brazenly fell back onto the surface of the river Styx. He floated up and down in the water, and countless tiny bubbles appeared all over his body. It was as if he had opened up all his pores and was drinking water. His withered body, which was like a dried corpse, gradually began to fill up. When he returned to normal, he directly stood on the surface of the water with a splash. He stood beside his mother with a gloomy expression, gritting his teeth and not making a sound. Grey Cloud Xian glanced at Yu Qianqiu. He did not know what evil method he had used to injure someone to such a frightening degree. Yu Qianqiu had a faint smile on his face as he stared at Li Zhong. To him, that attack just now could not be said to be a small harvest. Ever since he had failed to use the absorbing star's great art for the first time in the celestial world, he did not dare to use it recklessly. He was afraid that at a critical moment, he would go for wool and come home shorn. Now that he was using the 2 arts of fire and water together, he could use the power of the purple flames to condense an invisible high-energy blade that specialized in shattering the opponent's protective stellar chi. Then, he could use the absorbing star's great art of the water arts to complement each other. Just the thought of its might made him excited. It did not matter if the opponent had forged an immortal body, a nether body, or a demonic body. As long as they were hit by his absorbing star's great art, no matter how powerful their cultivation was, they would not be able to display even 1/10 of their usual strength. At this moment, the invisible and formless high-energy blade had become a formidable killing move that could easily take the opponent's life. What's more, he could completely condense a few more high-energy blades made of purple flames. Using the Guiyuan sword technique to control them, the power would not be something a normal expert could withstand. Seeing that his son was safe and sound, Li Guang let out a sigh of relief. He first glanced at the ever-vigilant grey cloud Xan, then stared at Yu Qianqiu and slowly said, "My son was reckless, but he has also been punished. From now on, we will go our separate ways, and our grudges will be resolved." "How is that?" "I never wanted to have any entanglements with Yurli Palace's water tribe," Yu Qianqiu indifferently said. These words undoubtedly approved of the other party's solution. The reason why he was so happy was because he did not know that Xiao Yuan's transformation into a dragon was due to his help. Otherwise, with his personality, how could he be so kind? Even if he did not scrape a sum of money from the Li Palace, he would still make the Li Palace owe him an enormous debt of gratitude. At the same time, because of his previous nonsense, of all the things he could say, he had to say that Xiao Yuan's body was like a roaming dragon, creating a coincidence. Originally, Li Guang still wanted to remember his great favor, but after thinking about it, he felt that it was because of Xiao Yuan himself. Yu Qianqiu did not do anything, so the matter was left unsettled. But then again, if it was not for his nonsense, of course, the scholar who was hiding in the air at that time would not have let him go so easily. He would definitely have captured him and brought him back to be studied. Thus, everything had two sides, and no one could say whether it was a blessing or a curse. Li Guang's face was expressionless. He glanced at Sungyin Xan, then flashed to the throne of the one-horned water rhinoceros and shouted, "Return to the palace." With these words, there were two cracks of a whip. The Li Palace's water tribe slowly sank into the river Styx, leaving from the bottom of the water. At this time, only Yu Qianqiu, Sungyin Xan, and Xinyu remained on the surface of the river Styx. The three of them had come together, but after the storm, only the three of them remained. The people of the distant hidden dragon villa all flew over. 100 people floated in the air, looking at the three of them in bewilderment. They had faintly seen Yu Qianqiu help the Li Palace's water tribe successfully transform into a dragon, and then saw Yu Qianqiu turn hostile and attack the Li Palace's water tribe. They could not hear what was being said, so they were confused and could not understand what was going on. "Dare I ask Sect Master Yu, what happened just now?" Ding Xiang cupped his hands in the air and asked, his tone clearly even more infuriating. F***ck. "You guys hid far away early in the morning, no matter what happened, I can't count on you guys to help." Yu Qianqiu was a little unhappy and casually said, "It's already over, it's just a small matter, not worth mentioning." Seeing that he didn't want to say it, Ding Xiang couldn't force him. He looked at the dark road ahead and said with a smile, "I don't know if Great Master Tsang and sect leader you are going to Twilight City. If so, we might as well travel together. At least we can take care of each other." He had made up his mind to find a way to get information from Yu Qianqiu. The Pegasus carriage piercing through the sky, and the Styx black carp leaping through the dragon gate and transforming into a dragon, such important matters, if he could get this information back to the sect, it would definitely be a great merit. So he had to find a way to rely on the two of them. As long as they were together, there was a chance of getting information, otherwise there would be no chance. How could Sungyin Xan and Yu Qianqiu not see such an obvious thing? However, Hidden Dragon Villa was a big sect in the immortal world after all. Sungyin Xan could look down on them, but Yu Qianqiu's World Chamber of Commerce still needed to survive in the immortal world, so there was no need to make another strong enemy. Moreover, it was not a bad thing to have more people who were familiar with the situation. He laughed heartily and said, "Elder Ding is right. If we travel together, we can look out for each other." Then he looked at Zhou Yu and said, "Let's continue our journey." Zhou Yu still had a lingering fear about what had just happened, so he did not dare to say much. He immediately sank into the water and revealed his original form. Yu Qianqiu and Sungyin Axian landed on the big shell and rode the wind and waves again. Ding Xiang called his fellow sect members and quickly followed. Half a day had passed, and Yu Qianqiu faced the cool wind on the Styx River with his hands behind his back. His eyes flickered as he looked forward, and he did not say a word. This made Sungyin Axian feel a little strange. This was the first time he had seen this fellow open his eyes and speak so honestly. It was truly rare. Chapter 10:13. A group of more than 100 people traveled upstream along the river Styx. They traveled for 5 days and traveled more than 10 million miles. For everyone, except for Shinyu, this was the first time they saw the various strange landforms on both sides of the river Styx. Apart from encountering some strong winds and waves along the way, they were safe. Occasionally, some water clan would block the road and question why they trespassed. After learning that it was Yu Qianqiu and Sungyin Axian, they did not make things difficult for them and let them pass. This scene made Ding Tong and the others from the hidden Dragon Mountain Villa, who were following the two nervously, secretly surprised. They didn't expect Grey Cloud Xian's face to be so big that he was so popular among the Styx's water race. They were naturally sure that it was because of Sungyin Axian because he was the one with the highest cultivation here. In fact, this was indeed the case. The news that Sungyin Axian had mastered the 3 swords in one sword drawing technique that only the sect master of Heartless Palace, Wang Qing, knew had already spread in the netherworld. Back then, the sect master of Heartless Palace, Wang Qing, used the sword drawing technique to dominate the netherworld continent. He was famous among the Water Clan. Therefore, after learning that Sungyin Axian was traveling upstream along the river Styx, the Water Clan sent down orders to their subordinates not to provoke Sungyin Axian to avoid unnecessary trouble. This showed how powerful Wang Qing was back then. Along the way, Ding Xiang of the hidden Dragon Mountain Manor was also very thick-skinned. Every time he was questioned by the Underworld River's water tribe, he would bluntly say that he was with Grey Cloud Xian and Yu Qianqiu. Other than looking at him with disdain, Sungyin Axian did not say much. He intentionally let the people of the hidden Dragon Villa know his power. Speaking of which, he was actually a little proud. In the beginning, he was quite wary of the Water Clan. Now that he saw that the Water Clan did not dare to challenge him, he could not help but be full of confidence. When faced with questions from the Water Clan, he always coldly spat out the 3 words, Sungyin Axian, with the demeanor of an expert. This made Yu Qianqiu despise him. When he saw Sungyin Axian's calm demeanor, he could not help but recall the vigilance on his face when he first mentioned the Water Clan. At that time, Sungyin Axian was not as daring as Yu Qianqiu, but now he was showing off his power. However, this was also good. It would reduce unnecessary trouble. This time, after passing through the inspection of the Nether River's water tribe in a region of water, Yu Qianqiu suddenly turned his head to look at Ding Xiang, who was flying at a low altitude, and said with a smile, "Elder Ding, since we are all in the same group, why don't you come down and have a chat?" He pointed at the shells under his feet that were breaking through the waves. There was still space, and about 5 or 6 people could stand there. Sungyin Axian looked at Yu Qianqiu in confusion. Ding Xiang, who was flying at a low altitude, was also stunned, and then he was happy. He was looking for an opportunity to ask along the way, but Sungyin Axian had always been indifferent, and Yu Qianqiu looked like he had a lot of thoughts in his mind. He had never found a suitable opportunity to interject, but now it came to him. He immediately cupped his hands and laughed. "Since sect leader Yu has invited me with great hospitality, how would Prime Minister Ding dare to refuse?" In a flash, he landed behind Yu Qianqiu, and also cupped his hands at Sungyin Axian. Yu Qianqiu turned around, looked Ding Xiang up and down, and said with a smile, "I suddenly thought of something just now. May I know why your sect is called Hidden Dragon Villa?" Is there really a hidden dragon in your sect? Ding Xiang was stunned, and then he waved his hands and said with a smile, it's just a symbolic meaning of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. How can there really be a hidden dragon? However, the process of sect leader Yu helping the Nether River Black Carp clan to successfully leap through the Dragon's Gate and become a dragon can be said to be legendary. Because we are too far away, we are not clear about the twists and turns. May I know why sect leader Yu fought with the Nether River Black Carp clan later? Yu Qianzhou chuckled and was about to say a few perfunctory words, but he felt Shen Yu slowly slowed down again. At the same time, he saw the smile on Ding Xiang's face freeze, and Song Yun Xian's expression also froze. Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but turn his head and see a stretch of white mountain range in front of him. It seemed a little abnormal in this dark netherworld. At this moment, Shen Yu, who was at his feet, also stopped. Is there something in front? Yu Qianzhou turned to look ahead and asked with a frown. As he spoke, he faintly felt a cold air blowing on his face. The hidden dragon villa disciples in the air also stopped in the air with a solemn expression. It's the Great Snow Mountain. Zhang Yun Xian said in a deep voice. Ding Xiang nodded slightly with a dignified expression, yes. When people from the immortal world go to Twilight City, they always avoid this flight route in order to bypass this Great Snow Mountain. It seems that we can't go straight up the Nether River, we have to take a detour. Detour? Yu Qianzhou was dazed, doesn't that mean we have to take a lot of detours? Zhang Yun Xian glanced at him, this Nether River is full of twists and turns. After a few days, we don't know how many detours we have taken. Do you still care about this little detour? Yu Qianzhou didn't argue with him, figuring out what was going on was the right thing to do. It was very conspicuous on the dark Netherworld River. The three of them looked at each other. Yu Qianzhou was the first to go in and shouted, come in quickly. Zhang Yun Xian and Ding Xiang saw that there was nothing wrong, so they followed him in. As soon as the three of them entered, they immediately understood the reason for the light. They saw 12 fish-sized white luminous pearls wrapped in the flesh membrane above their heads, illuminating the insides of the clam. It was rare to see 12 luminous pearls of such size. The open mouth of the clam quickly closed, completely isolating the darkness outside. It slowly sank to the bottom of the Netherworld River and moved quickly. Just as Shen Yu dived into the water, the surface of the Netherworld River not far away quietly stirred, and a black shadow dived into the water. Once Shen Yu reached the bottom of the water, he moved faster. Most of the space inside his body was occupied by his physical body. In the limited space, Zhang Yun Xian and Ding Xiang had already sat down cross-legged. Yu Qianzhou stood there and looked around. He looked at the slightly red clam flesh, which looked like a genuine leather sofa. What attracted him the most were the 12 luminous pearls that were distributed in a crescent shape. After looking for a while, he said thoughtfully, they should be pearls. We have entered the Great Snow Mountain in the Netherworld River Basin. Please don't make any noise. If you have anything to say, wait until we pass through the Great Snow Mountain. Otherwise, we will be discovered by the powerhouses on the Great Snow Mountain and cause unnecessary trouble. Shen Yu warned with good intentions. Yu Qianzhou immediately shut up and sat down cross-legged. The space was limited, so he could only face Zhang Yun Xian and Ding Xiang. The space was silent. About 2 to 4 hours later, there was a bang as if they had been hit by something. The space shook violently, and the three of them opened their eyes at the same time. Yu Qianzhou said sternly, Shen Yu, what are you trying to do? The three of them realized that they had fallen into a trap at the same time. Instantly, their gazes darkened, but at this moment, they could feel that they were moving faster in the water. Suddenly, they heard Jiu Yu say in fear, I have been wronged. It's not what I want to do, but someone is attacking me. The three of them looked at each other. Zhang Yun Xian snorted coldly and said, let me out. I want to see who the expert is. Having confidence was different. Bang! The space shook violently again. Jiu Yu exclaimed, "It's the crown prince of the Li Palace, Li Zhong. My speed in the water is not as fast as him. He wants to force us out of the Netherworld River." "Oh no, we have already entered the hinterland of the Great Snow Mountain in the Netherworld River Basin. He must have calculated this." The expressions of the three of them changed. Purposely attacking in the hinterland of the Great Snow Mountain, it was obvious that he had been planning this for a long time. His motive was obvious. He wanted to force the three of them out, and then use the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress to kill them. "Li Zhong." Yu Qianzhou suddenly stood up and said with a ferocious expression, "Bastard. How dare he play dirty with me? Jiu Yu, open the door, let me go out and kill him." Chapter 10:14. As he spoke, there were a few more bangs. Yu Qianzhou, who had just stood up, staggered and leaned against Shen Yu's body. Shen Yu smiled bitterly. "If you go out now, you'll be easily discovered by the people from the Great Snow Mountain. I'll think of another way to get rid of him." Shen Yu was being so responsible because he had no other choice. After all, Yu Qianzhou had placed a seal in his body that had yet to be undone. He didn't care about what happened to the other two, but he couldn't let anything happen to Yu Qianzhou. If something happened to this guy, he would die with him, so he had no choice but to be responsible. Think of another way. Yu Qianzhou, who was leaning against Shen Yu's body, had a dark expression. He roared, "Open the door for me. Killing him is the best way. If you don't open the door, I'll dig a hole to get out." "Fine." Shen Yu was helpless. As he moved quickly, the clamshell quickly cracked open a human-sized hole. Strangely, the water outside was blocked. "Don't give him a chance to escape." Yu Qianzhou threw a sentence at the other two and disappeared. Almost at the same time that Yu Qianzhou left, Zhang Yunxin and Ding Xiang also left with gloomy expressions. No one would be happy to be tricked like this. As soon as Yu Qianzhou emerged from the cold, pitch-black underworld river water, he immediately saw a 20-meter-long underworld river black carp leaping up. Needless to say, this was undoubtedly the crown prince of the Li Palace, Li Zhong. Li Zhong saw the clamshell open and immediately knew that someone was coming out. Without hesitation, he quickly changed directions and leaped out of the Styx River. He turned into a human and teleported several times, disappearing into the depths of the snowy mountain ahead. His speed in the water was unbelievably fast. This was probably the main reason why he dared to provoke him. Yu Qianzhou's speed in the water was quite fast, but the other party still had the upper hand. When he emerged from the surface of the Styx River, he could no longer see the figure of Li Zhong. Immediately after that, Zhang Yunxin and Ding Xiang rushed out one after another. The two of them looked at Yu Qianzhou with some surprise in their eyes. They had seen the speed at which Yu Qianzhou broke through the water, but they did not expect him to be able to swim so fast in the water. They could not figure out his depth. Little did they know that Yu Qianzhou had cultivated the water incantation, and his speed in the water was no slower than a fish. After the two of them looked around, Yu Qianzhou asked in a deep voice, "Where did he go?" Yu Qianzhou looked around with a gloomy face and said, "I don't know. But the reason he came ashore was to lure us out so that the master of this place could find us. But I don't think he's gone far. He should know that after leaving the water, it's very difficult to escape from an expert like you with his speed. He's probably hiding somewhere." The two of them nodded in unison and agreed with his analysis. Zhang Yunxin looked around and said in a deep voice, "This is the Netherworld, and we are not as familiar with it as he is. With such a treacherous person laying a trap behind our backs, he will be a disaster sooner or later. Let's split up and look for him. We must get rid of him." At this moment, Shen Yu also transformed into his human form and flew in front of them. He smiled bitterly and said, "We should take this opportunity to leave from the bottom of the Netherworld River. Otherwise, when the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress find out, you won't be able to leave even if you want to." Tsungyin Aksayan did not agree with these words. Although he did not want to cause trouble, he was very confident in his own strength. He was not afraid of the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress. On the other hand, Ding Xiang was a little hesitant, as if he did not want to lose his life because of the grudges between others. Go. Go where? Yu Qianqiu glared at Jiu Yu, then looked around, and said, "He clearly wants to put us to death. Do you believe that he will continue to cause trouble as soon as we step into the water, until the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress discover us?" As soon as these words came out, Tsungyin Aksayan and Ding Xiang's eyes lit up, and Yu Qianqiu himself was slightly startled. The three of them exchanged glances, and a common plan appeared in their minds, and that was to pretend to leave, lure Li Zhong out, and kill him. However, before the plan could be implemented, their ears twitched and they looked up into the sky. Countless gray shadows floated down from the sky. When the gray shadows got closer, they realized that it was white. It was actually snowing. It was snowing so heavily. They landed quietly in the flowing Netherworld River and landed on the mountains and plains on both sides of the Netherworld River. They could hear faint rustling sounds. Why is it suddenly snowing? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Shen Yu looked around and said, "Could it be that the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress have discovered us?" His words caused the other three to become alert. Tsungyin Aksayan couldn't help but snort. If that's the case, there's no need to play any tricks. Let's split up and search. That guy must be hiding nearby. He might be watching us. Let's find him and kill him first. Then we can deal with the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress. After saying this, he released his divine sense to search the surroundings. He had already flown out. Indeed, the skilled were bold. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. This old thing was a little too confident. They hadn't even ascertained whether the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress had discovered them. Why did he have to use a stupid method instead of a good one? However, it was already like this. He could only sigh and say to Shen Yu, "Elder Ding and I will search on the other side. You stay here and don't let Li Zhong have the chance to escape into the river." This. Shen Yu hesitated and smiled bitterly. How would I dare to attack the Crown Prince of Li Palace? Why don't I set up a mirage mist formation on this section of the river? If he really wants to escape into the river Styx, he should be trapped by my mirage mist formation for a while. As for what to do, you guys solve it yourselves. Damn it. What's the difference between this and fighting? Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. Do whatever you want. Just don't let him escape into the river Styx. Otherwise, I'll hold you accountable. He then flew to the other side of the river and released his divine sense to search bit by bit. Ding Xiang helplessly followed. He and Yu Qianqiu split up to search. In fact, he didn't want to become enemies with Li Palace. He regretted following them. However, he was already in the hinterland of Snowy Mountain. If he didn't work together with these two, he might be abandoned by them. He wasn't confident that he could leave this vast snowy mountain alone. Shen Yu, who was floating on the river, quickly released a rolling gray fog that surged to both sides of the river Styx. However, since Li Zhong dared to come alone to provoke them, he must have something to rely on. Otherwise, no one would joke around with their lives. The gray mirage mist sealed off the surface of the river and snow sprinkled down on both sides of the river Styx. The three of them searched a radius of several thousand meters but found no trace of Li Zhong. Li Zhong probably couldn't hide too far away. The three of them had no choice but to resentfully meet up in the sky above the river Styx. Now that things had come to this, the three of them had no other choice. However, they were 90% certain that Li Zhong was hiding somewhere nearby. They just didn't know what method he had used to evade detection from right under their noses. They had spent so much effort in vain. Left with no choice, the three of them secretly communicated and discussed for a while. In the end, they decided to use the previous method and pretend to leave to lure that guy out. Just as Shinyu retracted the gray fog and was about to return to his original form, a crisp jingle suddenly came from the distance. The three of them were startled and turned their heads to look through the drifting snow. Behind the snowy peak in front of them, the crisp ringing of bells could be heard. Not long after, a graceful girl wearing a white fur dress appeared from behind the snowy peak and landed lightly on the snowy peak. She also wore a furry fur hat on her head, and her black hair fluttered in the wind under the hat. She seemed to be looking for something as she strolled on the snowy peak. A pure white jade bell the size of half a thumb hung from her waist belt. As she walked, it emitted crisp and melodious tinkling sounds. The girl walked to the ice cliff on the side of the snowy peak and stopped. She seemed to have discovered something and bent down to pluck something from an ice cave. It was a pure white flower that looked like a snow lotus. She put it in front of her nose and smelled it. Then, she put it into her storage bracelet with a smile. A gust of wind blew, carrying snow and ice into the neck of her white scarf. The girl raised her head to look at the falling snow in the dark night sky, letting the falling snow hit her face. She even stuck out her bright red tongue to lick the snowflakes that fell on her lips. Then, she opened her arms and spun on the snowy peak. Her long white fur dress fluttered like a butterfly, and the jade bell on her waist kept jingling. Heavy snow swirled in the air. On the lonely night, on the lonely snowy peak, a lonely young girl was dancing alone. The rustling sound of the wind and snow mixed with the jingling of the jade bell gave people a poignant but beautiful feeling. Yu Qianqiu and the others who were in the sky above the Netherworld River were stunned. They felt that this girl was like an ice fairy that had descended from the sky. There was not a trace of smoke or fire on her body. Her otherworldly beauty was so shocking that it made people's hearts beat faster. After the girl spun a few rounds, she suddenly froze on the spot. She stared blankly at the people in the sky above the Netherworld River. It seemed that she had just realized that someone was spying on her. She put down her arms in a daze, and the jingle of the bell also disappeared. A trace of embarrassment flashed across the girl's face. It seemed that she was embarrassed that someone had seen her unrestrained behavior. After she calmed her emotions, she stretched out an arm and flew over through the wind and snow. She landed on the snow-covered bank of the Netherworld River and looked at the people in the sky. At first, the few of them were a little wary when they saw her flying over. When they realized that she only had the cultivation of a beginner-stage underworld venerable, they secretly made an exception and immediately felt relieved. They exchanged glances and landed in front of the young lady. Now that they were face to face, they could finally see her appearance clearly. That otherworldly beauty had increased, but she seemed a little thin and weak. Especially her smooth and bright cheeks that were suffused with a sickly redness, it gave people a feeling that she was weak and sickly. In the vast snowy mountain in the Netherworld, there was no trace of snow, and it was covered in silver. There were only a few people in mixed clothes standing on the snow-covered bank of the Netherworld River. Just as they were guessing the girl's identity, the girl who seemed to have walked out of a dream blinked her long eyelashes and glanced at them. She frowned slightly and said in a calm tone, "Why do people from the immortal world dare to come here? You should leave quickly. If you are late, you won't be able to leave even if you want to." The girl pointed at the floating ice soul and said to the others, "I can sense it. You guys should be able to find your friend if you follow it." Everyone's eyes lit up. Yu Qianqiu immediately transmitted his voice to Tsang Yun Xan, "Old Tsang, that guy is a scourge if left alive. I'll leave him to you. You must kill him." But on the surface, he smiled at Tsang Yun Xan and said, "You go. If too many people go, I'm afraid he'll lose face. Songyun Aksayan coldly snorted, shot him a glance, and then flew after the azure ice soul. The people on the shore of the underworld river watched as a blue light guided Songyun Aksayan to a hollow between two snowy peaks. The blue light of the ice soul descended there, sticking close to the surface of the snow and circling around as if saying that there was something beneath the snow. Songyun Aksayan had a face full of suspicion. He had previously inspected this place and found nothing beneath. After a pause, he once more released his spiritual sense into the layer of snow, but he still found nothing, but the person beneath the snow and ice was suffering unspeakably. Li Zhong really was hiding underneath, wrapped in a treasure of the Li Palace's water tribe. It was a white robe, and its effects were about the same as the straw raincoat that Yu Qianqiu was wearing. It could hide him from spiritual sense and other senses. Who could have expected that such a woman would suddenly appear, instantly making it impossible for him to hide? This was truly terrible. After a moment of confusion, Songyun Aksayan decided to push aside the layer of snow to take a look. Unexpectedly, the moment he moved his palm, a crescent of black light shot out from beneath the snow and slashed at his chest. Greycloud Aksayan's reaction was extremely fast. At such a close distance, he was actually able to quickly dodge to the side. Bang! A figure wrapped in a white cloak scuttled out from the layer of snow, continuously teleporting away with no regard for his life. You want to run? Songyun Aksayan angrily roared, his body explosively shooting in the direction that Li Zhong had fled in. A dazzling white light shot out from his sleeve, and with a bang, a cold light as delicate as a dragon burst forth, whistling through the air and causing a rain of blood to explode. Ah! A mournful scream suddenly resounded through the air, and the two halves of a body that had been split in half were revealed, falling straight into the vast snowy ground. The people on the shore of the underworld river only saw someone escape from the layer of snow. Songyun Aksayan chased after him, but what happened next was only a scream. The entire process was blocked by the snowy peaks. Yu Qianqiu and Ding Xiang exchanged glances. They reckoned that Songyun Aksayan had already succeeded. Meanwhile, the young girl was clearly somewhat dumbfounded. Then, with a ding, her figure flashed away, withdrawing the azure ice soul, and swept towards the back of the snowy peaks. Yu Qianqiu and the others also quickly chased after her. Turning around the snowy peaks, they saw a 20-meter-long underworld river black carp on the snowy ground not far away. It had been split in half, with one side facing up and the other side facing down. Fresh blood dyed the surrounding snow red. It was abnormally disgusting. It's someone from the underworld Riverly Palace. After looking at the dumbfounded young girl for a while, she suddenly turned to stare at Songyun Aksayan and said angrily, "Didn't you say that he was your friend? Why did you kill him?" She felt as if she had been used. Songyun Aksayan slowly put his sword back into his storage bracelet and indifferently shook his head. "Miss, I think you're mistaken. We really are looking for a friend. But I'm very sure that the person hiding in the snow and ambushing me is definitely not the friend I'm looking for. Think about it, why would my friend ambush me? I also don't know who he is. If you don't believe me, you can ask them." She tilted her head and pointed at the people who had just arrived. "Right, we don't know this person. Yes, this person isn't the friend we're looking for." Yu Qianqiu and Ding Xiang cooperated with Songyun Aksayan and gave him a perfunctory explanation. This group of crafty old fools. Whatever they said was reasonable. How could they possibly care about an inexperienced young girl? But the young girl was no fool. She could already tell that she had been tricked by them. She was so angry that she stammered, You actually used me to kill the Li Palace's water tribe. I won't let you go." Her sickly red cheeks became even redder. It was clear that she was quite angry. "Miss!" Songyun Aksayan coldly yelled, "You can't speak carelessly. With your cultivation, you want to kill us. You're overestimating yourself. Saying so, he snorted at the others. Since this young girl has already misunderstood us, I don't think we need her help. We brought this on ourselves. With a flash, he flew away. The others nodded and followed him over the snowy peak, flying in the direction of the underworld river. Before Yu Qianqiu left, he didn't forget to solemnly clasp his hands at the young girl. Miss, you really misunderstood us. Sigh. He shook his head helplessly and left. Big liar. The young girl screamed at Yu Qianqiu's back. It was this person who had tricked her into sympathizing with him and made her an accomplice. Flying over the snowy peak, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but turn his head to look. Why did these words sound so familiar, as if he had heard them somewhere before? Finally getting rid of the scourge Li Zhong, the few of them headed straight for the underworld river. They didn't want to stay here any longer. However, just as they landed on the underworld river, they immediately heard the cold voice of the young girl behind them. There really isn't a single good person in the immortal world. The few of them turned around and saw the young girl standing at the peak of the snowy peak. She clasped her hands together as if she was cupping water. She was cupping an azure object. Suddenly, she waved her hands and dozens of azure ice souls shot towards the bottom of the snowy peak. With a whoosh, they were buried deep in the snow. What is she doing? Ha! Is she cursing us? Ding Xiang laughed wickedly. The others were also confused. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, "Ignore her. Shen Yu, let's continue our journey." Yet, just as he finished speaking, the few of them suddenly felt a violent tremor from the ground. They couldn't help but turn around. They saw the ground beneath the snowy peak shaking. Dozens of huge bumps appeared where the ice souls were buried. It was as if something was about to burrow out of the ground. The expressions of the few people changed, the bulging snow bumps grew taller and densely packed cracks appeared. With a bang, they all burst. Dozens of huge snow-white figures rushed out. They were all kinds of animal shapes, all made from snow. There were snowmen, snow lions, snow wolves, snow leopards, snow bears. All kinds of lifelike ice sculptures that were magnified several times. What made the few of them change their expressions was that they had never seen an ice sculpture that could move. They couldn't see through their cultivation, so they didn't know if they were powerful or not. Once these monsters jumped out of the snow, they didn't stop at all. They stomped on the snow and quickly ran across the snowy plain. They roared loudly and rushed towards the few of them on the shore as if they wanted to eat them alive. Damn! What the hell is this? Yu Qianqiu stared blankly for a moment. Ding Xiang, who was standing to the side, had already shot out a ray of multicolored light. Whoosh! The flying sword drew an arc in the air, and it charged into the group of charging snow monsters like a rainbow, killing them one by one. However, these snow monsters ignored their injuries and continued to run. They didn't seem to be injured at all. What made them speechless was that the snow monsters that had their stomachs pierced quickly climbed up the snow on the ground and quickly healed their wounds. Ding Xiang, cut off their heads. Let's see how they can run. As soon as Grey Cloud Exian finished speaking, Ding Xiang had already used the sword control technique. The flying sword in the air once again turned into a rainbow and shot out. It flashed across the snowy ground. With a series of muffled sounds, dozens of snow monsters' heads fell on the spot. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.